in a world where AI is better than the average person at creating graphic designs or videos, well, the whole enterprise workflow associated with designers and designer productivity can be, reimagined into a way that actually delivers better sales for businesses.
Welcome to the /podcast, where we lean into the future of IT by inviting fellow thought leaders, innovators, and problem solvers to slash through its complexity. I am your host, James Carman, and today we're talking to Hikari Senju. Hikari is the founder and CEO of Omneky, an AI platform that generates, analyzes, and optimizes personalized ad creatives at scale. With a background in computer science from Harvard University and experience in AI technologies, Hikari is a subject matter expert in leveraging AI for advertising. Hikari is passionate about generative AI and data-driven creative solutions. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today, Hikari.
Thanks for having me, James. We're very excited to be here.
Yeah. And Omneky, that's kind of you would think it's Omnikey, like Omneky, but it's not. It's Omneky. And you always have a monkey as your picture there, not you, but like the company. Tell me about the name. What's the origin of that name?
Yeah, sure. So, as you noted, Omneky is weird, kind of weirdly spelled, and so it's an anagram of monkey.
Mm-hmm.
And the monkey is our logo. And I think the origin of the name is fundamentally when I started the company, really almost 7 years ago now. It was initially bootstrapped. The vision was that creativity was going to be automated by AI, and when one looks at some of the biggest creative companies, these are big holding companies, big ad agencies. Omnicom is one of the biggest ones. Publicis is the second biggest one. And so Omneky is kind of sounds similar to Omnicom, kind of this omni-channel communications platform. And then our logo, which is a golden monkey, is the same gold color as the Publicis line. So really from day one, the idea was, this creative industry is in for a real change, and that we wanted to really be one of the leaders in generating a new type of creative. And so that's the name behind Omneky. There's some elements here too. We're an omni-channel platforms, Omneky.
Sure.
It makes you smile when you say the name. There's a hard K sound, which kind of tends to kind of resonate more and kind of leave more of a memory trace, if you will, in terms of people kind of remembering the brand name. There's kind of a swallowing motion as well when you say the name. And so kind of the consonants, the sequence of the consonants start from the tip of your tongue and end the back of your throat. So there's kind of this ingesting motion when you say that name. So there's a couple other elements here regarding the name, but at the same time, ultimately, I think it was, again, starting the company, cheap domain name, like it was like $2 or something like this. Omneky spelled correctly was a little bit more expensive. And, when we were just getting started, it was just much cheaper to just buy the weirdly spelled version.
So I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you were so I work for Calibrity, and I was the one who helped come up with the name for the company way back in the day. And like as you're going through describing, like there's a swallowing motion and a hard K, and I was like, oh my gosh, people think that deeply about this stuff. Like I was like you, like the domain name was available, and surprisingly back in 2007, it was really hard to find a .com. But yeah, I'm glad to hear people think deeply about it, and I didn't.
I think also SEO, there wasn't a whole lot of, if you search Omneky, there isn't a whole lot of results either. So there wasn't going to be a situation where our website would be drowned by other types of stuff. And that was also a big part of it as well.
So since you are a subject matter expert and you're a pioneer in AI, again, thank you for coming on the show, but you are Googleable. So I did a little bit of Googling and I learned a little bit about you. Specifically that you've come from a long line of artists. So your father was a painter, waterfall paintings, I understand. And your uncle, your father Hiroshi, and your uncle Akira Senju, he's a composer and a conductor. Did some stuff with like anime and a lot of movies and stuff. So did you have the art bug? Are you an artist at heart, or did that apple fall far from the tree, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely grew up in a very artistic family. I mean, my weekends as a kid growing up would be spent in my dad's art studio. I would compose music. My summers when I would be visiting my uncle would be in his music studio. We'd be composing music together, and so it was definitely very creative growing up, and I liked making things. And I think that's really what got me into programming and computer science was ultimately this joy I felt from making and creating, um, and that in some ways programming for me was almost like a paintbrush or a piano, just another medium for creation and creativity. Um, and at the same time, I think being a generative AI company, I think definitely when I studied computer science at Harvard, and I was also taking a lot of AI coursework at MIT. And when I saw the early kind of AI demos generating kind of these really precursors to art and sound and things like this, and it kind of you know, immediately got it like, wow, this will revolutionize art. Will revolutionize creativity, especially kind of intuiting and understanding Moore's law and kind of the way technology exponentially improves. And so yeah, that I think that's one of the reasons why we were I really appreciate you using the phrase pioneer, but like we were very early to the space is just because I was kind of more attuned to like the revolutionary nature of this technology at a very nascent state because I had grown up in such an artistic and creative family where like um a lot of the early drafts of music or art looks guys doesn't always look very great either, and intuiting understanding kind of that like uh you know, and the other element is also that my grandfather worked at IBM, and so I kind of grew up in this very technological family as well. Um, Kind of intuiting Moore's law and understanding that okay, well, in a couple of cycles, this technology will probably be on par with human abilities, and then just kind of then being like, wow, that's pretty revolutionary if that actually ended up happening. Got me very excited about this space and very hooked into generative art almost a decade ago. And so that's how I really got into generative AI is through generative art about a decade ago.
Well, that's really cool. Yeah, it's funny. A lot of folks kind of consider computer science, to be kind of like a hard thing, right? Like not hard, difficult, hard as in not soft, right? Like
Of course.
that is not a creative thing, but it is. It's a very creative endeavor. So and people don't realize that. So I'm glad you hit on that. I was reading also an article that was on Medium about 5 years ago. You shared your reading list on there, by the way, and I love it. I'm going to definitely be looking at some of the books on there. But you talked about kind of that your experience through the startup community, and some of those things jumped out at me. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Briefly, I don't want to rehash the article because people can go read that for themselves. But just maybe clue us in a little bit about that startup community at Harvard. It seemed like it was very supportive, and it kind of helped you kind of get your feet and get you bootstrapped and started.
Yeah, absolutely. So I, studied at Harvard from 2011 to 2015. And that's really kind of, the period where computer science becomes the most popular major. You have the social network come out about Facebook. And, yeah, like the whole Harvard kind of, ecosystem pivoted to technology and I was a very lucky beneficiary of it. So there was a lot of resources being invested into, say, like the Harvard Innovation Lab, which was kind of this space where startups would be incubated, and there were some uh, you know companies that raised sizable venture rounds from Harvard Innovation Lab. Um, and so as a student, it was like an amazing environment because my years as a student was actually a lot of it was spent at the Harvard Innovation Lab,
That's cool.
building company and scaling and building prototypes and meeting investors and learning how to pitch and hire and recruit and build prototypes and hire and build engineering teams and build applications. And so I was very lucky because that, it's not a typical experience to have a university offer that many resources, AWS credits and all this was
Yeah.
something available as a student to then quickly kind of build apps. And um, I was very lucky for sure. And so, yeah, and then there were some startup clubs that were being founded during this time period as well that got me very integrated into kind of the more like-minded entrepreneurial classmates, many of whom I'm still friends with today, and almost all of whom are in the Bay Area,
hmm
either running their own companies currently or working at some of the high-flying companies right now. And so, yeah, it was a really great experience in that regards.
Yeah, it's cool. It seems like that's it's kind of a unique thing. I'm sure there are other universities that support their students that way, well as well. But I was just reading about that. That just jumped out at me as like that's really something special. Very cool. Okay, so these days, you're kind of in the ad space, and everyone's kind of saying that AI is changing advertising. But from your vantage point, what do you see that's actually changing, and what would you say is mostly noise around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so advertising today is definitely changing creativity, like creative content creation,
Hmm.
influencers. Um, yeah, I mean, kind of the meat of what our advertising historically been, which is about creating great stories that resonate with consumers and scaling that in an ROI positive way. That's been completely revolutionized. I mean, using our tool Omneky, you can generate hundreds of variations of creative, launch them across all different channels. It would optimize the creative. It drives consistently higher return on ad spend. It's never been easier, cheaper to generate effective creative content. At the same time, the competition for creating effective content has gone up. And so it's
Hmm.
definitely now more about using and more intelligently using data to optimize that creative. I think in 2025, we entered a period where AI became better than the average graphic designer.
Hmm.
I think 2026, AI is going to surpass the average video editor. Um, and in a world where AI is better than the average person at creating graphic designs or videos, well, the whole enterprise workflow associated with designers and designer productivity can be, reimagined into a way that actually delivers better sales for businesses. And so, um, we go about this by connecting and integrating directly with the customer's marketing stack, and then getting real time performance data, and then what keywords, what colors, what and objects within the video, what sequence of objects, what video hooks, what persuasion tactics are delivering sales for different target audiences, and then automatically imbuing those elements into the prompts to then generate more effective content that is, increasingly completely indistinguishable from human created content, and that consistently delivers better sales. And so I think advertising has been through, yeah. And so in that regards, I think it really is like a really revolutionary period of time in advertising.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, is there anything like kind of that second that follow up part of that question, like that? There was a lot of hype around stuff, and everybody's saying, "Oh, this is all going to be upended, or this is going to change," but you're like, it's not, it's really kind of still the same. Is there anything like that still kind of
Well,
left in the ad
there's,
space?
yeah, I mean, there's definitely that next step, which I sometimes hear, which is, well, maybe advertising is going away or something. But like,
Hmm.
like now everything's gonna be a chat bot or something. I don't, yeah, I mean, I think advertising is like one of the oldest industries in civilization.
Hmm.
As soon as people had signs saying like, "This is I'm a tailor, come visit my shop," uh, or like cave paintings, perhaps were argued as advertisements, for example. So like, um, yeah, like people are always going to be seeking other people's attention to draw customers, and so as long as there's entrepreneurial people and new businesses being formed, they're always going to be seeking some kind of method for connecting and kind of broadcasting their services and products to new markets and new audiences. And so that's kind of essentially what the advertising industry is. And so there will always be a market for people to, for platforms to sell attention. And then there will always be demand for buying attention. Uh, so that, I think, it will continue as well.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so you're mentioning like kind of AI generated copy and whatnot, like, and I have no idea. I didn't do the research. I probably should have. But so where's the law at right now about like all this generated content? If I wanted to generate content from my company and I wanted to copyright that or whatever, can I do that? Who owns that at that point? If OpenAI generated it for me, do they own it? Do I own it? How's that work?
Yeah, I think it's still a little bit in the gray zone. I think there's some laws associated with training content, but then perhaps the content that's generated is not, kind of, if there's a human in the loop involved
Mm,
in creating that content, it's more copyrightable. There's some kind of human genius involved in
okay.
creating a unique piece of art. I don't think you can just straight up, um, you know, but then again, I think it is really hard, right, to say what is. And I think this also ties into growing up as son of an artist as well. Is that even art is very hard to copyright, or like
Hmm.
there are constantly, there's that classic quote, like good artists copy, great artists steal. Like artists are constantly just stealing other people's work, and and there's constantly lawsuits regarding artists suing each other for like, you stole my idea, or this is you, like, or if you're a musician, you like sample someone's art, music, and then you incorporate into your music. And so like, I think art is always about getting inspiration from other great pieces of content, then remixing it and creating something novel. And so, yeah, I think it's always going to still kind of be a gray zone regarding in terms of what's copyrightable and what's not copyrightable. Um, and especially as this technology advances, there'll always be new kind of uh, frontiers as well in terms of what can. I didn't know, like, is that how much human is required? How much human involvement is required to make something truly novel? But I think generally the thing is, I think it's roughly like completely AI generated content isn't completely copyrightable, but the training set is copyrightable, and you have to pay to use the training set and things like this. But it's not very clear, 100%.
Gotcha. And you're talking about kind of how the designers have the AI is getting better than like designers, right? Graphic designers these days. As AI is taking over more and more of kind of this execution of advertising. What do great designers or creative folks, what are they going to be doing in the modern era now? What is their role in this world?
Well, I think creativity, kind of going back to this point earlier, even my background, initially having created some music as a kid or drawing paintings as a kid, and then now being a computer scientist, and then now building companies, is that humans are always going to be creative. And
Hmm.
just the creativity, you know, there was a whole industry, used to be industry related to creating oil paintings, and obviously that industry kind of disappeared with photographs. And but then people became artists in terms of photography and other types of mediums. And so I think the mediums will change, probably the outputs will definitely change. There will be democratization, so more people can be artistic. If you have an idea for a movie,
Hmm.
for example, anybody can probably now generate a compelling movie without having to raise tons of money or have lots of budget. So there'll be a democratization of certain types of media that was historically a bit more expensive. Probably things like building, well, definitely now, building applications, building movies, things like this, games, totally, largely democratized programming, being kind of a creative space, not being more democratized as well with these agentic tools. So I think just what it means to be creative will be different, but and the tools will be different. But humans will continue to be creative and continue to create, novel experiences for other people. So I don't think that's going away.
Yeah, I think that's a natural like need for an outlet for human beings, and
Yeah.
they'll figure out a way to be creative no matter what, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a
Yeah.
human, I think there's, like, it's like, I think there's a human instinct to want to like create things for other people. I think
Hmm.
there's just
Yeah.
something inherently like human about that. Like the desire to leave maybe a legacy where I think this is why a lot of people want to be architects, right? Because there's this kind of innate human desire to like build a building that like outlasts you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that desire is pretty universal, and I think that desire will be expressed in different ways, and it just with different tools and with different outcomes and experiences. But humans will continue to be creative, but just in different ways.
And you mentioned programming. Obviously in our world, we're a custom software development consultancy. Our world, it's very disruptive. There's talk about like kind of what happens to all the junior folks if we don't need junior programmers, or what happens to them? Do you feel like there's going to be the same sort of phenomenon happening with on the creative side as well?
Well, first of all, I think what's great about these agentic tools is it lets more people be programmers. And
Hmm.
yes, I think maybe the apprenticeship period might be a little bit longer, perhaps, if you to really harness these tools. But then again, the rate in which these tools are also becoming more and more accessible is also pretty exponential. This feels like every month, for example, these coding tools are getting more agentic
Hmm.
and accessible for even like uh, you know more junior engineers as well, or people with less of an engineering background. Um, the way I would like to now, like the analogy I've used is it's like kind of like compilers. Like, in computer, so I study, I had to study operating systems, I had to study
Uh-huh.
compilers as a student. Does understanding compilers and operating systems make me a better programmer? I mean, yes, absolutely. But can I program without understanding compilers and operating systems? Yes. And so likewise, I think when it comes to the best programmers, yes, like does understanding, you know, the way the code is written and the architecture of the code help make me a better programmer? Yes. But is it necessary going forward? Just like it was like understanding how compilers or operating systems work? No. And so um, it's just another level of abstraction that, like, if you did understand that abstraction, it would make you more effective and probably help you identify issues or bugs or be more creative in terms of coming up with novel architectures, et cetera. But it's not necessary. Um, and so that's kind of how I'd imagine is that, like, yes, the very best programmers will continue to understand the full stack, you know, but but when it comes to the business of building compelling experiences or building compelling applications, there are other elements that are involved in building a great product. That's not just completely having a deep technical understanding of the stack. And so, like understanding the customer pain points and the user interface and making it accessible and just kind of having high level understandings of what this technology enables for people. And design and so that's kind of how I view it. Is it's kind of like programming is going to become kind of like understanding compilers or operating systems. Like, good to know, but
Yeah.
not necessary.
Right, like, I had to take an assembler class when I was in
Exactly.
college. You probably didn't, but
Right,
like,
exactly.
it's
No, I get it.
again, as you said, it's just another layer of abstraction. Could I write in machine code? Maybe. Could I write in assembler? Maybe. Like, but then you get up to these fourth generation languages and fifth or, wherever we're at now with generative AI. So, okay, I like it.
Right, exactly. And and probably eventually this AI will sufficiently be abstracted, so it's going to straight up writing machine code. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't even do the programming languages anymore because it's just straight up program, writing code directly to the chip level. So, because there's definitely inefficiencies at every step of the stack.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, and this will be interesting because you do have that artistic background. Do you worry about AI, now that it's getting into kind of the creative territory, and but it's all these models are statistics based and all of that sort of thing, right? They're just kind of generating the most statistically likely outcomes, right? Um, to a degree, there's some creativity there, but are you worried that it's going to flatten creativity into sameness with AI being involved? Are you worried about that as we're going to kind of devolve into this kind of sameness?
Yeah, I mean, I think so there was interesting, work done, research done there, right? Which is like there's flattening of creativity because these AIs kind of all abstract. So the more context you provide, the more creative it can get. So yeah, very simple prompts are going to result in very simple answers. More contextual prompts are going to result in more contextual, more unique answers. And so I think this is really about learning how to work well with machines. And when it comes to creativity, like this is where personalization is so important, like having more context about who that user is and what their interests are and what, their kind of cohort of cluster of similar people and their interests will provide more context with AI to be more creative, more personalized, a little bit more differentiated than the default generations. And that's really where our engine comes in is, yes, you could use any of these chatbots to generate a generic image or generic video, but where we come in is we close the loop. We integrate with the customer's data and we provide that additional context so you can actually create more differentiated, unique experiences that actually deliver real business results for our customers. And so um, it is a function of how much context I think you provide. And the more context, the more differentiated the answers tend to be.
You brought up the data, and that's kind of what my next question was about, the data. So historically, kind of creative, you have kind of a creative side, and you kind of have a data side, and they're two different worlds, right? Now we're kind of combining creative with kind of the data. What happens when creative becomes kind of a data system as opposed to a purely creative endeavor? How do those worlds combine?
It's so exciting. I mean, design is turning into a math problem.
That's my
It's
world.
exactly. That's really exciting. I think the moment something becomes quantifiable, actually the best practitioners make more money. If you improve the scale and kind of accountability of a certain outcome, the best practitioners make more money. They're also remunerated. They're also now the whole ecosystem is more incentivized to create better experiences because it is quantifiable. And so that actually helps benefits consumers because now consumers are going to have better advertising experiences. They're going to have better app experiences, and then there's an opportunity now for the company for the enterprise to truly reimagine design and creative in a data driven world where design is no longer an art, or I mean, it is still an art, but it's really more of a science. And that, a lot of these toolings today, a lot of the tools today are designed around designer productivity. So it's more about, how can I make this designer more collaborative or more productive or create their thing faster? But really, if that designer is not being automated and you don't even need that person anymore in that seat, but now it's an AI agentically doing all these things, then, a lot of that tooling is also becomes unnecessary as well. And so I think this is why the design space is going through a real tectonic shift right now, because the main user of these tools is disappearing or changing to something a little bit different.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's analogous to kind of the software development world, I guess, as well, because we're becoming orchestrators of LLMs instead of just clickety clack on keyboards so much. So yeah, it's interesting how there's a lot of parallels there.
Or even like the industry of selling buggies, right? Like when you had horses and you had a whole carriage industry, but then now when the horses are gone, you don't need to sell carriages anymore. And now there's a
Mhm.
whole new automotive industry. And so, again, if you think of that specific role as the equivalent of that horse who is going away, then that whole buggy system also it needs to pivot into something
Right.
else.
Yep.
That said, I think some of these companies do pivot, right? So, for example, I was reading, we were talking before about like books and how I'm a massive reader of books. And I was just reading this biography on Firestone Tires and the founder of Firestone Tires. And his family started off creating tires for horse and buggies,
Okay.
and then he pivoted from, that to car tires. And so like some companies do pivot across different technology shifts and others don't. And so that's really more about, the creativity and innovativeness of these companies and their management teams.
Well, I'm glad Mr. Firestone did, because I just bought some Firestones for my daughter's car. So yeah,
It's yeah, I mean, by the way, that's one of my favorite books, really, truly.
it's a good one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna write that down actually while we're talking. I do have so what sort of data do you find that as we gather and use it in the creative process that actually improves creative outcomes? What's the best kind of data for that sort of thing?
Yeah. So, the data that we utilize are things like colors, color combinations, keywords and phrases, persuasion tactics, the font size, the size of the product in the image or in the video, like what percentage of the screen is used to showcase that product, the size of the fonts or the headlines and sub headlines. We really try to quantify, you know, thousands of different features for each creative. And then we build predictive models based on those features in terms of what's delivering higher return on ad spend for a given campaign or for a given target audience. And so, but that generally, I think the good place to start is different value props. Like companies have a sequence of value props in the way they communicate value for their customers. And kind of you want to quickly A/B test those and then create permutations of those different copies when it comes to their value props. Um, so that's, I think, a good place to get started, as well as, again, like the object and imagery, like what's within the image or video itself, and being a big driver as well.
What about like I know like when it comes to generative AI, context is king, but there's a point at which you kind of get those diminishing returns. Have you found any sort of like did you think early on when you're developing the product like, well, we need to gather all of this data, this extra data, and as you experimented, you started learning that like that data really wasn't very valuable for good outcomes. We can kind of not even really worry about that. Was there anything like that as you went along?
I generally think more data is better. I mean, the vast majority of data is noise, and so you can't really, it's not always very useful, but you don't really know what will be noise at any given time. And sometimes one data point points to something else that was like the AI wasn't smart enough to realize that it was it was pointing to something else. That
Mhm.
it was this other thing that was driving, say, higher engagements or sales. But generally, I would say that yeah, the more data and context you have, the better. Yeah, and then the other point I think is like the volume of that data. So, for example, first initially optimize for click through rates because that's where the highest volume of data is. Then sales, and then if you're an enterprise customer, we have integrations with like CRMs, but that N is so small when it comes to like, each individual lead and the score of that lead and the enterprise value of that lead and whether they end up driving a close, getting statistical significant results at that small N is harder unless you're operating a massive business. Most businesses, I think, can optimize and get a lot of insights at the click-through level of the ad. Then maybe a slightly higher scale business can find real results in terms of, for example, the click-through rates of their landing pages, if they have enough visitors to their landing page to run robust A/B tests, and
Uh-huh.
then like a much larger scale business can then find results when it comes to, say, lower funnel events. But sometimes a small startup is trying to find insights or results regarding these like low funnel events where they just don't have the volume of data to really get useful insights at that low part of the funnel because they're just not getting enough volume. So it may work for an enterprise, but it's harder for a small business to get valuable data at that low end. Um, and so therefore, like a lot of these small businesses can just start by running more effective creative tests at the ad level and just measuring what drives higher click-through rates. And from there, start getting more insights. And I don't think enough businesses do that. I don't think enough small businesses do creative testing at the ad level to get insights at that level. And they go immediately into the landing page or the other kind of customer touch points when there sometimes isn't enough end or enough volume at that point to get useful insights.
And the risk for the low volume scenario is that you might have kind of a false signal and you might take action on something that's really, it's not, it would have been noise in a higher volume, but because as you said, N is so low, you might take action on it and it really is garbage. Okay. Gotcha. Makes sense. We talked a little bit during the prep call about kind of, I mentioned like that ads, can feel creepy and, when it comes to like personalization and stuff. And I thought you really had a great take on that. And I want to hear more about it. But like, I know people, they get freaked out when like, oh, this ad knows me so much, or whatever, the system knows me so much. It's giving me ads directly about me. That's creepy. Are they just doing it wrong, or how do we do that better?
Yeah, I mean, I think like retargeting ads have gotten a really bad name for itself because it is kind of perceived, you're kind of getting this kind of follows you around the internet. You
Yeah.
do something once or you search for something once and then it's something follow like and that I think is perceived. But a lot of it I think is just the nascency of this technology and that it's still very early days for this technology and it's only going to get better. And so like, cause creepy ads don't benefit anyone. It doesn't benefit the advertiser. It doesn't benefit sales. It doesn't benefit the brand. It doesn't benefit the consumer. Like the pressure is on to definitely, and the competitive pressure is on to iterate and make it more effective, to be less alienating for consumers, and creepy and kind of distasteful. So, I think a lot of this creepiness factor when it comes to even AI generated creative content is just more reflective of the nascency of that technology than that, it's just not that effective yet, versus, what it will be in the near future. And so even like, again, like, image generation and graphic design generation, I would say, it's been hyped for maybe at least half a decade now. It's definitely been around for about a decade. It's only until last year, like since last year that it actually got like, you can't tell if it was human or AI. You can look at a photo and you just don't know if it was AI or human generated anymore. And I think we're entering that phase now with videos as well. You look at a video, you just don't know if it was AI or video. I mean, it's that uncanny valley. So when it's going through that uncanny valley, it's creepy. But then when it passes that uncanny valley, it's just it's not creepy because it looks real. And so I think a lot of this creepiness factors is just kind of this technology just going through that uncanny valley. But when it gets to the other side, people won't know the difference.
Yeah, I think, and you mentioned like you can do it well and not be creepy. I think we talked about this in the prep call, but like I think of like those type of things that I encounter in my daily life. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of like when I open up my Apple Maps, for instance, and I'm getting ready to go somewhere. Well, it looks at my calendar and says, "Oh, you need to take your daughter to volleyball practice. So here's if you want to map that or whatever." Same thing with ads. If I know I'm looking for a certain type of product or something to help me solve a problem, if it helps me get there quicker, that is beneficial to me, right? I think it's when we get inundated with all the extra gobbledygook that we don't want that I think where it starts to get to be a pain. But if it does help me get there quicker, I think it is helpful.
And I think that's really what the end state of advertising is. And this is actually the bull case for advertising. And actually, I think the trend is advertising will probably be a larger industry in the future because as the advertising technology becomes more effective, the market for it only increases. Today, the advertising industry is, some percentage of GDP, but it will only double and triple and, replace a lot of sales, replace a lot of human sales, already is, um, as it becomes cheaper and more effective at convincing people to say, buy a product than a salesperson. I'm actually bullish on advertising. I think advertising industry will grow faster than the overall economy based on the fact that like it will replace more and more of these kind of other roles because as it gets more and more effective, it just makes more sense to run a personalized advertising campaign than to field a massive sales team, for example, to go door to door, cold call, or send emails.
We
or
won't be
do
selling vacuum cleaners and door to door anymore. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that human touch probably will, be very, continue to be effective. But yeah, I think like, the cold emails or the cold calls are they'll, do people really pick those up anymore? Do people even read those anymore? Like not really. So then why hire a huge sales team to go do this when I can just buy those ad impressions for a fraction of the cost of a sales team to drive a similar outcome probably more effectively.
And it might be easier to kind of measure the effectiveness of
Yeah, exactly.
that
It's
spend.
measurable and it's accountable, and then you can optimize it, you know.
Hmm. So you mentioned, kind of you hinted at a little bit, but like if we zoom out, 5 to 10 years in the future and we're looking at advertising, what are there any like structural shifts that you feel are going to happen in advertising that it's just inevitable that it's going to change in a structural way, even more than it has?
I mean, I think it's going to be completely automated or almost as closely automated as possible. I mean, I think generally advertising is less effective. People make mistakes, right? People make mistakes. People aren't awake 24/7. They aren't working 24/7, and AI can work 24/7. I mean, you had a period where stockbrokers, you'd have human stockbrokers buying and selling stocks, then that's less effective than just an algo buying and selling stocks and analyzing way more data points and working 24/7 and kind of integrate with all the different global markets. And so likewise, I think advertising also, like, the less humans in the loop, the more 24/7 it is, the more real time it is, the more reactive it is and up to date it is in terms of, what's going on. And therefore the more effective it is. It'll be more scalable, it'll be cheaper. It'll also probably be more secure because there's less humans, and a lot of like vulnerabilities ultimately related to human vulnerabilities or touch points. It is a more effective system. I think that the orc is more automation. I was reading this, blog post by Dwarkish, and he has this popular podcast, and there's this like it's called a Capital in the 22nd Century, and I read Capital in the 21st Century, and it's by Thomas Piketty, and he goes, the arc is more income inequality because capital generally accrues value faster than labor. And then the highest income capital have access to more types of products. They can, like investment products that have higher rate of return than kind of what most people have access to. And so his argument is like the world is always entering more inequality because highest income people have higher rates of return. But then there's the flip argument of this is, well, actually not really, because in a world where there's infinite capital or there's infinite capital accumulation, as long as labor is a bottleneck to acquiring more capital, labor acquires a sufficient and larger share of capital as well. So if you think of the technology industry, for example, engineers and technology, the employees of these technology companies make a lot of money. And the reason why they make money is because they're the bottleneck to these tech companies acquiring more capital. And so as long as labor is a bottleneck, there is kind of a contrary force that reduces income inequality because more and more money is being spent towards labor. That is the bottleneck for the acquisition of capital. That said, though, 80% of income is associated with labor. It's not associated with capital. So most discretionary spending happens not from the interest somebody makes from their stock, but from the from the salary they make, right, from their job. And so, like, most income is still disproportionately associated with labor. That said, in a world where capital replaces labor, if like you can totally automate every single job that a human does, you don't need labor anymore, where you have these self-replicating machines that can replicate themselves infinitely, then you have a world where you have an infinite explosion of capital with a stagnation of labor share, where like you have capital that's just reinvesting itself into, say, replicating machines that can then go and, I don't know, build Dyson spheres or colonize other planets or whatever it is. And you just have this explosion of capital growth unconstrained by labor. And in that world, that is just, a complete world of just exploding inequality, right? Like you have, it's like pools of capital essentially going in, like, I don't know, colonizing solar systems or something, and like building Dyson spheres without any labor input or without any share of that wealth being shared with or requirement for labor. And so like that said though, like I think that's so far in the future. Like I don't think capital is going to replace labor. I think labor will always be a bottleneck for the foreseeable future in terms of the accumulation of capital. That this fear of like this runaway growth by complete automation and the runaway growth of inequality and capital accumulation due to automation is still so far in the future, like that, like a lot of this fear mongering, I think is a little bit unfounded. I think labor will continue to be the constraint when it comes to capital accumulation. And therefore, I think we'll continue to live in a world that's, again, the highest, sources of income. We're going to be associated with high income forms of labor. Anyway, so, yeah, okay, cool. I just kind of
So
went on
you're
that.
so you're saying I'm not going to be like laying around in a floating chair like the movie Wall-E anytime soon.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that the future there, right, is again like capital explodes into some infinite value, and then like there's income inequality. There's UBI, suddenly everything, like now there's UBI and nobody's working, and capital just infinitely replicating itself. Is I think a future end state at some point, maybe centuries from now. But is it going to happen in decades from now? I don't think so.
All right. Well, this has been a great conversation, but we have to move on to our next segment of the show. This is what we call Ship It or Skip It.
Ship or skip, everybody, we gotta tell us if you ship or skip.
And this is where, we can just come up with a topic. It's kind of a hot or not sort of thing. And, you say, ship it. Yeah, I like that idea. Or skip it. No, we'll talk about it a little bit. We talked about this in the prep call as a possible topic, but kind of the traditional startup funding. Do you feel like that's gone away or going to go away with, the ABC round type thing with AI? Does it change that, or how does it change that, or if it does at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are certain types of projects where, increasingly graduated amounts of capital make sense in this kind of ABC style, where maybe, like 10, then 100, then billion or something like this, in terms of like, okay, put in like small amount of money, test it, see if it works, put a little bit more money, see if it works. And then in that kind of roughly reflects A, B, and C stage app. And I think predominantly it works for, say, things like SaaS tools or kind of internet technologies where you are essentially betting on different levels of scale and kind of provability of that technology. That said, though, I do think there are certain types of projects that require lots of capital up front that doesn't necessarily fit the ABC kind of format. And I think actually most businesses are, you're kind of forcing this ABC structure onto, in various imperfect ways into variety of types of businesses. For example, OpenAI was not this kind of company, right? It required many, many years of research and R&D and heavy capital expenses up front in the format of a nonprofit company before it built a compelling product that suddenly achieved amazing scale and breakout. And venture is going to have to be more creative in terms of the way these projects is formed. I think a lot of the big successful companies, even in the public markets today, whether you think of like companies like Palantir or CoreWeave or AppLovin, were not traditional venture darlings in any way, or like really fit that ABC stage for funding cycle. They were kind of all unique in its own way. And so, I think being overly constrained in that thinking could be not great because it kind of makes you miss certain opportunities. And some of the biggest companies today in this past 10 years have not necessarily fit this kind of structure.
Okay.
But I think generally it's a good tool, mental heuristic to use when evaluating capital and risk capital and the return of that risk capital. And I'm sure that it'll be applicable for certain types of companies.
Okay. What about, I guess the best way to phrase this would be like synthetic focus groups where you're kind of having AI simulate, consumer or customer feedback to help educate you on what type of ads or marketing to do. What do you think about that idea?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think simulations are always, useful. Probably it depends on how good the simulation is. But I'm sure there's basic stuff that you can test out just through basic simulations. Nothing really beats real world feedback though. But I think that, the accuracy of these simulations will only improve as technology gets better. Probably bullish long term on more simulations, testing things out. But yeah, that's also kind of a function of like where it is technology is today versus where it'll be, 6 months from now or a year from
Right.
now.
Sure. What about advertising inside AI-based interfaces like chatbots, assistants, and copilots? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely inevitable that advertise because I think like this is recently like or about a decade ago, like the guy who invented the Dutch auction, like won the Nobel Prize or something, and it's this kind of like high frequency system that Google and Meta and all these ad companies make money, which is every attention moment is an auction where you're selling that piece of attention to the highest bidder. It's probably the most lucrative business model ever invented in the history of capitalism. The fact that you can bid for attention at any moment. That capitalist incentive or like business incentive to therefore monetize every piece of attention in that way is so great. And I think the temptation for businesses to monetize attention in that way is so great that I think it's inevitable that this kind of auction-based system for attention permeates mass consumer technologies. And so I think we will definitely see this technology in any popular consumer application. That said, I think as a designer for these products, you definitely need to kind of balance that, monetizing that attention with the trust of the consumer. And so if the consumer believes that they're getting incorrect information or they're being misled or that they're getting, bad information because an advertiser bid more for it, that would probably hurt retention. But at the same time, look at businesses like QVC or honestly, even companies like Instagram right now, like it's mostly ads at this point. So like, I think if the ad is relevant and is useful, there is a humongous market for people to spend all day looking ads and buying products from ads. So I think it ultimately comes down to consumer trust and how you communicate what you are to that consumer. And then as long as the consumer is aware of this and they're aware that they're being sold to, that is the kind of application they're using, then I don't think there's necessarily an issue with maybe there's like a chatbot that's more advertising centric and there's a chatbot that's more quote unquote like truth centric or something. I don't know.
Okay. And did you say, I wrote it down, I think, Dutch auction, that's what it was called?
Yeah, I mean, it's this mechanism in which like you give the price. So every time there's an auction, you don't give it to the highest bidder, but you give it to the second highest bidder, a little bit more expensive than the second highest bidder in terms of how do you price auction effectively. So, let's say somebody were to bid $1 million for, say, showing an ad to you, and someone were to bid, say, $10, then like that, that ad will be sold for $11, something like this, like not $1 million, because that's just not, it's not sustainable. So that's kind of the mechanism in which a lot of these ad platforms operate, where you have multiple bidders, and then you quickly kind of figure out the price of that moment of attention is through this kind of formula.
All right. And my last ship it or skip it. I don't know if this is even a thing, but it was kind of ChatGPT helped me with some of this stuff. So what about short-lived disposable brands built entirely for paid ads? What do you think about that concept?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I think there'll be a world where products aren't even built before the ad gets built first, right? And then you build it. It's kind of like the Shine model where like you're advertising the product first. And then if you actually get enough people to buy the product, then you actually like build the product. So it could be a disposable brand, it could be a disposable product, but you're just quickly just A/B testing different images and different designs, different clothing and different mugs or whatever, different kind of tchotchke that you want to kind of sell to people. And then only once you realize there's a market for it, that you actually go and build the supply chain to build this thing. Yeah, and then these are kind of fast fashion at like an extreme level where it's not even like the thing is being built. Like the thing isn't even built yet. It's just all initially just an ad.
It's cool. I hadn't heard of that yet. That's cool. Okay. All right. So that is it for Ship It or Skip It. We are now moving on to our lightning round.
It's time for the lightning round. Rapid fire, don't slow down. Answer quick and make it count. In this game, there's no way out. It's time for the lightning round.
And I don't know if you've listened to the show, but this is the bulk of the show. This is what people tune in for. This is the most important part. people fast forward through all of the stuff you just said. Even though you're a pioneer in AI, they're just going to skip that because they want to know these questions. This is the meat of the show. This is what people really tune in for. So, I just want to make sure that you understand these are graded questions. There are right and wrong answers, and there's an algorithm, that we do use to score this. And it's I don't want to bore you with the details, but it's a pretty involved process. So I just want to make sure: are you mentally ready? Are you prepared for the lightning round?
I don't know. It's just, you're making it sound kind of scary. Like, I think I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Cool. Who was your first celebrity crush?
First celebrity crush. Yeah, I'm kind of stumped here. Like Jennifer Aniston or something like this, but then she's also so, I don't know, or Anne Hathaway. Like these, they've been so in the media for so long that those are kind of the names that like immediately like I recall like knowing and kind of Taylor Swift. Like maybe something along those lines.
Gotcha. All right. Are you a sourdough or a wheat kind of guy?
Gosh, I love the taste of sourdough, but the wheat I think is healthier. But I don't know, sourdough.
Okay. Are you a big dog or a small dog kind of a person?
I'm a small dog. I have a little small miniature poodle cavapoo. Yeah, because it's apartment dog.
You live in city, right? So it's kind of
I live in the city. I live in San Francisco. I work. I think like with the big dog, you just a lot of work. You got to constantly walk them like multiple miles every day. I just don't have the time for that. So a small dog just kind of exercises himself or herself and gives me more time to kind of focus on work while having the benefits of having a dog.
Yeah, you still have a dog. You don't have to have a cat. It's kind of the crossover. Yeah. What about this?
The most cat-like dog.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know how to salsa dance? No. Okay. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
4 or 5, something like this, maybe.
It's respectable. This has been a recurring question that I've been asking every guest, and this is an interesting one. Do you like the smell of gasoline?
No.
No.
It feels like if I smell gas, I'm like, well, if there's some fire, I'm gonna like get burnt or something.
Okay.
Do some people like the smell of gasoline? I don't know.
Here's the funny thing. We have been asking this question for, I think, a couple months now. You're the first person who said no.
Really?
And what normally happens is people say, yes, I do like the smell of gasoline, but it reminds me like filling up the car while we were going on vacation. So it's always associated with something else. It's not like purely just, I love that smell of gas. There's usually some sort of an associative thing going on. It's been a fascinating kind of run here. We've had quite a run of everybody saying yes. So you're the first.
I love driving. I love driving. I mean, I commute to my the office every day, and I drive. And so I love the freedom of having a car and driving. But yeah, I always felt like getting gas is more of a chore.
Okay. All right. That's fair. That's why we ask a bunch of people. We got to, otherwise we would have said it's unanimous. We got to ask a bunch of people. Did you go to a sleepaway, like a summer camp where you go away from your parents and everybody go off somewhere and stay there for a week, type of summer camp as a kid? Did you do that as a kid?
Yeah, I did. Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Cool. That's been a pretty popular thing. Have you ever seen a kangaroo in person? No. Do you have any friends who are taller than 6'4"?
Yes.
Okay. And if you're journaling, are you more of a paper or computer kind of a journal person?
I don't journal.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. Let's see. And finally, how would you rate your karaoke skills on a scale of 1 to Mariah Carey?
3.
3? Not great.
No.
Like, okay.
I my dad loves karaoke. People get really into this. People really get into karaoke, and some people get really good. I'm not that good at karaoke, though. I think it's really a great activity, and it's really fun, and I enjoy going to karaoke with friends. It's always a fun time, but I'm not very good at it.
Now your dad's from Tokyo, from Japan, right?
Yes.
And that is a big thing in Japan. Karaoke is very popular.
It's like golfing. It's like a big business thing when you go karaoke together, like you'd go golfing together, and just a way of getting to know somebody.
That's hilarious. That's cool. Now, so did you live in Japan? Did you ever grow up there, or did you grow up here in the States?
I grew up in New York, in Westchester.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
In the United States.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you never really encountered or lived through the the karaoke craze in Tokyo that is
No,
there.
but
Your dad did.
there's definitely a craze. Yeah, for sure. Well, a lot of Asia, I think, in general, more broadly, there's big
Is
karaoke.
it? Okay.
Yeah, like KTV kind of thing. It's a big social thing.
My goodness. Wow. All right. Well, that does it for our lightning round. Thank you. I think, just looking through, thinking through the answers, I feel like you did okay. Yeah.
Okay.
You're all right. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
don't sweat it. I don't think you don't need to be worried about anything. So I think you're fine. Yeah. Anything coming up like with the company? Any new big releases, new features, or anything like that you've got coming out? Or are you giving a talk anywhere? Are you have a book, or are you doing a one-man show on Broadway? Anything like that? Anything you got coming up?
Well, I would definitely, the product is, we generating high quality video ads for users, and we have a 7-day free trial. So definitely would suggest your listeners just try it out. It's risk free, and try generating some ads and creative contents. You can edit it, you can create images, you can create videos in a variety of dimensions. You can resize creative, you can create avatar ads, you can create longer form videos. It's truly shocking how good this technology is now. It's truly indecipherable from human created content. And so that this technology, we have some very exciting advancements regarding the higher quality content generations and video generation, as well as more integrations with more ad platforms coming up in the near future. But big announcement to make is just try out the tool, and risk-free, and see for yourself.
Yeah, I think we're going to try it out. Calibrity, I was actually just telling our director of marketing about it. I was like, hey, we're having a really cool guest on today. I thought, his product, you should check it out. We should kick the tires on it. So
Please do.
I think we would. Yeah. Yeah, we will. All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been great. Hikari, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on. We really enjoyed the conversation, and, come back anytime.
Thank you, James. Thanks again for this amazing conversation. And really enjoyed it.
All right. Well, if you'd like to get in touch with us here at the /, drop us a line at the /@calibrity.com. See you next time. The / podcast is created by Calibrity. The / team is director and producer Ryan Wilson, editing by Steve Baradelli, marketing support by Taylor Blessing, and I'm your host, James Carmen. Thanks for listening.